Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. For context, I own a business called Serenescapes. It's a high-end botanical nursery and landscape design company that I built from the ground up over the last 15 years. We specialize in rare plants, custom garden designs, and exclusive workshops for serious gardening enthusiasts. The property spans about 12 acres, with the public nursery taking up about 7 acres, and my private residence occupying the remaining 5. I've worked incredibly hard to make it successful, often putting in 16-hour days, especially in the early years. My home sits at the back of the property, separated from the business by a small wooded area that creates a nice buffer. I've got a beautiful garden, obviously, and a pool that I had installed about 5 years ago as a personal reward for reaching a major business milestone. The pool area is clearly on the residential side of the property, surrounded by privacy hedges and not visible from the public areas of the nursery. For the past year, there's been construction on the adjacent property. A new luxury housing development called something ridiculous like Elite Estates or whatever. The developers actually tried to buy my land when they first started planning, offering what they thought was an irresistible sum. Maybe it would have been for someone else, but Serenescapes is my life's work, and I wasn't interested. The construction has been a pain. Noise, dust, and the occasional worker wandering onto my property by mistake. But recently they finished, and people started moving in. That's when a different kind of problem began. Last Saturday was scorching hot, around 95 degrees with suffocating humidity. I had spent the morning helping with a sold-out workshop on drought-resistant plantings, then the afternoon dealing with inventory and ordering. By 6 p.m., I was exhausted, sweaty, and desperately in need of a cool-down. Most of the staff had gone home, and the nursery closes at 5 on weekends, so I headed back to my house, changed into my swimming trunks, and slipped into my pool. It was absolute bliss, the cool water washing away the day's heat and stress. I floated on my back, eyes closed, just enjoying the quiet. Then I heard voices. At first I thought I was imagining it. The pool area is quite private, and as I mentioned, it's nowhere near the public parts of the business. But the voices got louder, and I realized someone was approaching. I stood up in the pool, wiping water from my eyes, just as 2 women rounded the corner of the hedges. One was tall, with expensive-looking highlights and designer sunglasses perched on top of her head. The other was shorter, dressed more casually, looking uncomfortable as she trailed behind her friend. The tall woman stopped abruptly when she saw me, her face instantly transforming into a mask of disapproval. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp and carrying across the water. "What do you think you're doing in there?" I was confused, to say the least. "I'm swimming," I replied, not sure what else to say. She crossed her arms and scoffed. "This pool is clearly for residents or guests of the development. Staff are not permitted to use these facilities." That's when I realized she thought I was an employee using a pool that belonged to her housing development. I was so surprised that I just stared at her for a moment. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, moving toward the edge of the pool. "This is private property." "Yes, exactly," she snapped, as if I'd just proven her point. "Private property for residents, not for the help." She looked me up and down with undisguised disdain. I was wearing simple swim trunks and probably still had dirt under my fingernails from earlier. I can see how someone might not immediately peg me as the owner of a successful business, but her attitude was something else. Her friend tugged at her arm and whispered something, but she shook her off. "Look," I tried again, "this pool is on private residential property. It's not part of your development." "Don't be ridiculous," she said, her voice getting louder. "I was just given a tour by our realtor yesterday. She pointed out all the amenities available to us as homeowners, including this beautiful nursery with its gardens and pool area. We paid a premium for access to these facilities." I almost laughed. Her realtor had seriously misrepresented things if she'd implied that my business and home were amenities for the housing development. "Your realtor was mistaken," I explained, climbing out of the pool and grabbing my towel. Serenescapes is a private business, open to the public during business hours, which ended at 5 p.m. today, and this pool is not part of the business. It's part of my private residence. The woman actually laughed at me. "Your residence, please? Do you really expect me to believe that a gardener lives in a place like this? I wasn't born yesterday." Her friend was now looking mortified. "Maybe we should go," she suggested quietly. "No," said the woman firmly. "I'm not going to let the help think they can take advantage when no one's looking." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the owner right now to report this." At this point, I was getting irritated. I'd tried to be patient, but there's only so much condescension a person can take. "You want to talk to the owner of Serenescapes?" I asked. That's exactly what I'm doing, she replied, furiously scrolling through her phone, presumably looking for the business number. Well, that would be me, I said calmly. I'm OP, the founder and owner of Serenescapes. This is my home, my garden, and my pool that you're currently trespassing on. She froze, then looked up at me with narrowed eyes. You expect me to believe that? You? You look like you just finished mowing the lawn. I sighed. I often do mow the lawn, among other things. It's my business and my property. Prove it, she demanded, crossing her arms again. I was tempted to tell her I didn't have to prove anything to someone who was trespassing on my property, but I decided to end this quickly. I walked over to a small table near the pool where I'd left my keys and wallet. I pulled out my driver's license and held it up. This has my address, which is this property. I can also show you my business cards, or we can walk to the main house where there are plenty of photos of me at various industry events and with clients. Her friend was now tugging more insistently at her arm. Let's go, this is embarrassing, she said, loud enough for me to hear. But the woman wasn't ready to give up. I don't care what ID you've managed to get. There's no way someone like you owns all this. My husband and I paid nearly 7 figures for our home specifically because of the exclusive amenities, including access to this very pool. Now I'm going to call security. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Ma'am, there is no security except for the system protecting my property, which you are currently trespassing on. Your realtor lied to you if they said you have access to my business outside of public hours, let alone my private residence. I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. I most certainly will not. I'm calling the police, she declared, starting to dial. Please do, I replied calmly. I'd be happy to explain to them how you trespassed onto clearly marked private property and then refused to leave when asked by the owner. That made her pause, finger hovering over her phone. Her friend seized the opportunity. We're leaving right now, the friend said firmly, pulling the woman's arm. I am so sorry about this, she added to me, but the woman jerked her arm away. I want to speak to your supervisor, she demanded, apparently still convinced I was an employee. I couldn't help but laugh. I don't have a supervisor. I own the business. And yet you're swimming in the middle of the day when you should be working? I don't think so. It's after business hours, and even if it weren't, I set my own schedule, I explained, my patience wearing very thin. Now this is the last time I'm going to ask nicely. Please leave my property immediately. Or what? She challenged. I picked up my phone. Or I call the police and report you for trespassing, and I'll be speaking to the development's management company about your realtor's misrepresentation of my property as an amenity for your housing development. That finally seemed to get through to her. Her face flushed, though whether from embarrassment or anger I couldn't tell. This is ridiculous. I've never been treated so poorly in my life, she huffed. Her friend had apparently reached her limit. For heaven's sake, look around. We are clearly in someone's backyard. There are personal items everywhere. This isn't a community pool. You're making a scene over nothing. We need to go. The woman looked around, seemingly noticing for the first time the potted plants with experimental crossbreeds, the personal patio furniture, the book I'd left on the table. Her certainty wavered visibly. How was I supposed to know? She demanded, trying to save face. The realtor specifically said, Then your issue is with your realtor, not with me, I interrupted. I suggest you take it up with them. But right now, you need to leave. The friend practically dragged the woman away, apologizing profusely over her shoulder as they went. I heard them arguing as they disappeared around the hedge. I sank back into my pool, but the peaceful mood was gone. I couldn't stop thinking about the encounter and how the development might be misleading potential buyers. The last thing I needed was a stream of entitled residents thinking they had access to my business and home. First thing Monday morning, I called my lawyer. I explained the situation and asked him to send a cease and desist letter to the development company regarding any misrepresentation of my property as an amenity for their residents. Then I had my landscaping team install some additional private property no trespassing signs along the boundary between my land and the development, as well as a more decorative but clear private residence no public access sign at the path leading from the nursery to my home. I also called the development's management office directly. The manager seemed genuinely shocked and apologetic when I explained what had happened. He assured me that they never authorized their realtors to present my business as an amenity, let alone my private residence. He promised to address it immediately with their sales team and offered to send a clarification to all residents. I thought that would be the end of it, but 2 days later I was working in one of the display gardens when I spotted her again, the same woman, walking purposefully through the nursery during business hours, looking around as if searching for someone. I ducked behind a large hydrangea display, not wanting another confrontation. My general manager approached her, and I could just make out their conversation. "Can I help you find something?" my manager asked politely. I'm looking for the owner, the woman replied, her voice carrying. I received a notice from management about some misunderstanding regarding amenities, and I want to speak to whoever is responsible for complaining. Do you have an appointment? My manager asked. We typically schedule consultations for landscape design in advance. I don't need an appointment. I'm a resident of the neighboring development, and there's been a misunderstanding I need to clear up. My manager's voice remained professional but cooled noticeably. I see. If you'd like to speak with the owner about a business matter, you'll need to schedule an appointment. They're not available for drop-ins. This is unacceptable, the woman said, her voice rising. First I'm told this place is an amenity, then I'm told it's not, then I'm treated like a criminal for using a pool, and now I can't even speak to whoever is in charge? I've spent a fortune on my home because of the advertised proximity to this establishment. By this point, several customers were watching the exchange. My manager, ever diplomatic, lowered her voice. Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated, but as I said, the owner isn't available without an appointment. If you'd like to leave your contact information, I can see if they'd be willing to call you. Fine, the woman snapped. She pulled out a business card and thrust it at my manager. Have them call me today. This is ridiculous. After she left, my manager brought me the card. The woman was apparently a luxury real estate consultant herself. That explained a lot. She probably felt embarrassed professionally as well as personally by the misunderstanding. I debated whether to call her, but ultimately decided against it. The development management had already addressed the issue with residents. My lawyer had sent the necessary legal warning to the company, and I'd improved the signage on my property. There was nothing more to discuss, and I had a feeling any conversation would just lead to more drama. A week went by without incident. Then yesterday, as I was leaving a local restaurant after lunch, I spotted her and her friend at a table near the window. The friend saw me first and nudged the woman, who looked up, met my eyes, and quickly looked away, her face flushing. The friend waved apologetically, and I nodded in acknowledgement before continuing to my car. That small moment of her obvious embarrassment was surprisingly satisfying. I guess she'd finally accepted the reality that I was, in fact, the owner of the property she'd trespassed on while treating me like a disobedient employee. This morning, I received an email from the development management company. They wanted to discuss the possibility of actually creating some sort of partnership where their residents could get special access to workshops or events at Serenescapes, properly organized, scheduled, and paid for, of course. I'm considering it. It could be good for business, and most of the residents are probably lovely people, not entitled like my pool visitor. Plus, there's a certain poetic justice in creating an official relationship after that woman made such a scene about the imaginary one. As for my pool, I've been enjoying it even more than usual lately. There's something especially refreshing about swimming in water that you own, on land that you own, knowing that your hard work made it all possible, regardless of what you happen to be wearing or how dirty your fingernails are. I suppose the moral of the story is, don't judge people by their appearance, don't trespass on private property, and most importantly, don't mess with someone in their own pool. You might just find yourself all wet. The next one is a pro-revenge story. So first, some info. A little while ago, I couldn't use my left foot because I got in an accident while skiing. I was lucky because my grandma has an automatic car where you only need your right foot for gas and brakes. I'll be calling myself Bad Parker BP and the Store Peel SE for store employees. Later, you know why. So I was going to do some shopping in the town that I live, not that big, and there are only 2 spots for disabled people, opposite of the small walkway in the middle. These parking spots have a sign, attached to 2 poles for whatever reason, on the walkway's side. I see cars already parked in those spots, which pisses me off, but it happens. The bad side is that the closest parking spot is quite far, but I settle with it, and so I park on the other side of the parking space. During my walk, as far as you can call it with those humps on both sides, I look at the cars parked like I always do. It's fun to see the difference in taste for cars, and at the ones in the disabled spots. In my country, you need a special blue card under your front window to show you're disabled. If you don't have it and still park there, the ticket is expensive. And it pisses me off, but I can't do much because I couldn't really kick it, right? So I do my shopping and return to my car to see that both cars are still at the spot. But the car without the card has someone sitting in it. And just to be helpful, I walk up to his window, knock on it, and ask him to not park at these kind of spots because he's making it a really hard time for people like me, or worse, to walk that far. I was just trying to be helpful, but the man responded with opening the door as hard as he could and hit my leg in the process, a smirk and an annoying sorry only an entitled brat could say. I knock again and he gives me the middle finger but drives away anyway. Skip 1 week and I drive up to the area again just to visit a friend who lives there. I see the same car standing in the spot. Thinking by myself what BP did to me, I wanted him to feel how annoying it was if someone parked somewhere you weren't supposed to, and as luck was on my side, there wasn't any other parking space left, so I parked right behind BP's car with very little space. As I climb out of my car, BP comes up to me and starts demanding me to move my car because I was not supposed to park there or else he will call the police. As the a-hole that I am, I give him a smirk and a sorry that only an entitled brat could say, and walked off to my friend's home, leaving him swearing at me. The parking space is right in front of a store, and there's camera security over the whole area, with an additional camera pointed towards the entrance and the disabled parking spots. My friend opens the door and we just hang out for a while. When suddenly we hear a loud bang outside, my friend looks out the window and asks me what my car looks like and where I parked it. I give him the description, and then he follows up to tell me I should check on my car and see what has happened. We both walk out and see my car has a huge dent and a lot of scratches. Turned out BP just forced his way out, and the only possible way was through my car, as the poles with the sign is unbreakable. Apparently this wasn't the first time this kind of stuff happens, and one of the SEs walks out and tells us everything was probably recorded and we could easily sue BP for what he did. However, I was pissed. I wanted to let him have a chance to explain himself because it could have been something very urgent and I didn't want to be that big of a douche. He turned out to be a regular customer of the store and the SE were helpful with calling him. He was pissed. He said I had no right to park behind, and if I didn't pay for the damages I did, apparently he'd call the cops on me. After he was done ranting off, I asked him politely, as I could as I was pissed myself too, why he crashed through and if he could pay for the damages done to my vehicle. He snapped and sweared at me through the phone, which was apparently being recorded by the SE, which I figured in court. But I cut him off and told him he could either pay or I'd sue him for not only parking wrong or damaging my car, but also for attacking me with his door, but he hung up on me. So I called the cops on him. Through SE, they got his phone number and license plate and they told me to sue him, so I did. In court, it became also clear he had multiple tickets still open, which he did not pay. He got a ticket for parking on a disabled spot. He has to pay me for all the damage done, and a fine for attacking a disabled person. I was thrilled and felt I'd done some justice. Moral of the story, don't be a douchebag and park where you're supposed to, or it may cost more than a ticket. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Many years back, I was working in an office for a company in one of their satellite sites. In general, for your day-to-day, you only needed to use one system as it did everything that you technically needed. But it didn't do everything you actually needed. Now, I was an older employee and was there before the new shiny bespoke software got rolled out, which meant I had login details for the old system, which was still the backbone of half of our head office work and fed into what we saw. This was really useful as it meant I could log in and access loads of information that we actually needed, information that some faceless exec had decided to exclude from the new system. So, for the next 3 or 4 years, and I would log in every couple of days and download a report or two, giving us buying reports, stocking issues, and more that I could then share with the rest of our site. It wasn't confidential information, and while we could do without it, it definitely made life easier having it. Think of it as the difference between getting a drink in the middle of the night with the lights off, but it's a damn sight easier with the lights on. Anyway, we'd never had an issue and no one had complained until one day one of the department managers found out I was downloading reports from a system that she was adamant that only her team needed to use, and she contacted IT and had them revoke my access. And annoyingly, she did so without letting me know, which meant when I logged in the next time, well, I didn't, and just got an error message. Locally, we had no idea what had happened, so a quick email to IT and got told that Karen had had my access blocked. So then it's a quick email to Karen to find out why, and all I got was a short and curt, "You don't need access. If you need to know something, you ask my team." I figure there's 2 reasons for this. One being she's a power-hungry pain in the arse that likes to control people. And 2 is she'd been trying to expand her team, and I guess if you make 20 satellite stores run through her, then you create the workload you need to take on 2 or 3 more people so you can give your best friend flexible working hours. Allegedly. Oh, 3 reasons actually. She really hated me after I called her out once and humiliated her in front of the company directors. To which she lodged a complaint to HR demanding I be fired, only for the CEO to tell them to withdraw it as I hadn't done anything wrong after I named him as a witness to the event, so malicious compliance time. Those reports I downloaded, granted it was only 2 or 3 reports, and only 2 or 3 times a week, which doesn't seem like a big amount, but those reports helped resolve 50 plus complaints and inquiries per day. So now, I guess we have to email her team each time. I told the rest of my team to run every query through me, and I would email her team. 1, because I didn't want anyone else to get in trouble, as I knew this was going to make her explode. 2, because I could field the queries to make sure each one was unique, as we did get duplicate info requests, and if they've told me once, I didn't want to upset them by making them tell me twice. And thirdly, because I'm a dick, I wanted her to know it was me. She managed a week. By day 3, she had contacted my manager to complain, and by day 5, because I hadn't stopped, we still needed questions answered. She had a meeting with HR, and I got a cease and desist request, asking if I could send a single email at the end of each day with all the queries in. It turns out if you email 6 people up to 50 emails a day, at some point someone misses an important invoice and a whole shipment gets delayed, or worse, gets canceled. The upside. Within a couple of months, her team was restructured, with different members being given regional coverage. Turns out the reason her team looked so busy is because they would count one job done by one person as being 6 jobs, one for each person, because they were all included in the same emails. Turns out you don't need a bigger team if you're honest about the work they do. And secondly, the reports I downloaded, each person in her team now has to download them themselves twice a week and send them out to the stores in their region. The other stores had just decided that now they couldn't find out. There was no reason to know, and answered queries with "I don't know" for years, so we accidentally made their services better too. The next one is an entitled people story. This story happened quite a few years ago with me and my friends, but after reading quite a few stories on this subreddit, I feel now is as good a time as any to share this post. On November 2019, me and a couple of my friends, who I will call Haley, Rose, and Rachel, were given an opportunity to travel to the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Note that we are archaeology graduates. While our families and friends were excited and proud of us of being able to go on this trip, Rachel's family did not feel the same way. Rachel's younger sister, who I'll call Lisa, was the golden child of her family. Anything she wanted, her parents gave to her. While Rachel had to take out a student loan to pay for college, Lisa's parents paid for her tuition only for Lisa to drop out 2 years in. Instead, Lisa chose to try and build a career being a model and influencer on Instagram. When Rachel mentioned that she was going to Egypt with us, that our plane tickets and accommodation have been already taken care of for archaeological fieldwork, Lisa got jealous as she felt that a trip, taking photos of herself in Egypt for Instagram, would help launch her modeling career. That said, their parents demanded that Rachel give her tickets to Lisa as they felt Lisa was more deserving of it, to which Rachel obviously said no, it was already paid for by the foundation specifically for her and our group who were trained to do this kind of work, etc. According to Rachel, she's had back and forth arguments with her family leading up to the trip that she eventually just left home and moved in with her boyfriend's, now husband, apartment. I held on to our plane tickets as we were all to meet up at my dad's place in the morning before we head off to the airport. At the time, I still lived with my dad. That said, as me, Rachel, Haley, and Rose were at my place, just hanging out and getting ready, the car of Lisa and their mom pulled up as they came knocking on my door. Apparently, they were demanding one more time that Rachel give her ticket to Lisa. Lisa even had a couple of bags with her as well. Before I continue, just to give you a better understanding of Lisa and Rachel's family and why they may behave or think this way. Rachel is the only one in her family who has actually finished college. Rachel pretty much took care of herself for much of her childhood as her parents were too fixated on Lisa. Their parents moved to Los Angeles from Florida to try and become actors, but failed, moved up here for some reason, and now their dad works as a truck driver, and their mom, I think, works at a grocery store. Rachel's family treated formal education and academia in general as a joke, and didn't really support the idea of anyone going to college until Lisa decided she wanted to try going to college herself, as previously mentioned. Haley then interjected, interrupting them and pointing out again that this was not a vacation, this was an archaeological trip, and we were going there to do actual work. Haley went on to point out that it's Rachel's name on the plane ticket and on our accommodation in Luxor, so she asked Lisa and her mom questions like, how do you think Lisa is going to get on the plane, who will Lisa be traveling with in Egypt, and where will Lisa be staying there? Apparently, Lisa, despite not being friends with us at all, and her mom expected the rest of us, me, Haley, and Rose, to just somehow convince customs to let her through and get on the flight, as well as expecting us to look after and accompany Lisa. I should also note that apart from Rachel, nobody in her family ever traveled on a plane before. Lisa and their mom have never been overseas, and the only international traveling their dad ever did was driving trucks to and from Mexico. That said, I'm guessing this is why they don't seem to know how plane tickets or customs work, but that's just my assumption. I then pointed out to Lisa that if she really wants to go to Egypt, she could just buy her own tickets to Egypt and book her own accommodation. However, Lisa said she didn't want to do any of that, and she wanted Rachel's place in our trip, as she wanted all the expenses to be paid for and for us to accompany her, as she didn't want to travel by herself. Lisa and her mom eventually left after seeing that trying to argue and force her way into our trip was not getting them anywhere, with the four of us, me, Haley, Rachel, and Rose, flying off to Egypt. After the dig at the Valley of the Kings, we did get to go and do touristy stuff such as touring Cairo and seeing the pyramids of Giza. As for Lisa, while she still posts a lot on Instagram, she seems to have given up on a modeling and/or influencer career as she's now just working in a warehouse. After the pandemic, she did get to go on vacation to Cancun though, but that's about it. Anyway,